Welcome to Deep Economic Thoughts with economist and best-selling author Ivan Illan. Once in a while, Ivan shares an unscripted, though potent, idea related to economics or the capital markets. This may be of interest to financial advisors and retail investors alike. Enjoy.
And we are back. Welcome. Thank you for staying with me and Senator Josh Newman. And we welcome to our conversation tonight a very, very smart and I will say distinguished gentleman in the finance industry. He is Ivan Illan. He has been on this broadcast many times over a number of years, providing economic information and advice and sensible conversation to that's useful to the listeners and useful to me too, because that's important, because the host needs to be happy. Listen, Ivan, are you there?
I'm here, Bruce. Can you hear me?
Yep, I hear that great voice. How are you?
I'm doing well. Good to be with you.
Meet Senator Josh Newman. Josh, say hello to Ivan.
Ivan, nice to meet you, sir.
Yeah, great to meet you as well.
Ivan, have you been listening? I wonder if you've been listening.
I have, yes.
Okay, then you've heard a little bit about our guest, Josh Newman. Also, I want you to join me in our next half hour to talk about issues that really are the most important issues in any election, obviously the national election, but also our lives, and for Josh and his constituents in his 29th district in California. So let me start, Ivan, by asking you, give me a Reader's Digest version of where we are economically and where you think we're going. And Josh is going to jump in anytime.
Okay, yes. I mean, it's obviously something, I mean, from a political standpoint, the economy and the state of the economy is always of very great interest to the electorate, to voters. And I mean, it was a politician a couple of decades ago, or was one of the James Carville, I think he said, it's the economy, stupid. I mean, this is ultimately what really drives and motivates people for change and looking for solutions. And right now, I think there's a lot of pain out there, and it may not be so obvious in the aggregate data that we see nationally, but there's some kind of stunning challenges. Like, take the unemployment rate, for example. Most people are familiar with the 4.2%, that monthly rate that gets broadcast, once a month. But how that 4.2% is determined actually includes people who are just working 1 hour per week. And so it actually doesn't give you a very clear picture of what's happening out in the economy. And so there's actually a metric called the true rate of unemployment from the Ludwig Institute. And they've been publishing this for many decades. And it's about 24.4% is the true rate of unemployment. And that means making less than $25,000 per year, which generally is considered the poverty line. So our labor force is actually, not in great shape when a quarter of the entire labor force is, making less than poverty wages. And I would say that's one of the most, concerning parts of it. But again, a lot of this you won't see. You don't see it showing up in retail sales. You don't certainly see it showing up in the stock market and the amazing performance that we've been seeing there year to date. But it's very real, and it is a big concern. And of course, these things are not sustainable. You can't ignore these kinds of issues, certainly economically.
Ivan, let me bring Josh in on that topic. Your constituents in your district, what are they feeling? What are they saying about unemployment? What are they saying about the grocery store? What are they saying about their standard of living?
So my constituents, to Ivan's point, are really stressed out. They're really stressed out. So they are concerned about, California is an expensive state. They are worried about their ability to earn a decent living across their household, enough to pay for all these things. And so they are worried about the cost of housing, the cost of energy, the cost of transportation. They and their kids are worried about the high costs of education and student loans and the stresses those bring. And to your point, food. This has been a couple of years of real inflationary pressures. Real wages, at least on paper, have kept up, but in people's actual lives, to Ivan's point, it feels really precarious.
Kamala Harris is touting the fact that she, if elected, she wants to convince the Congress to allow her to give a $25,000 down payment to young or first-time buyers. She wants to expand the child tax credit. These different things. Is this just talk, Josh? And Ivan, I want you to jump in on this too. Is this reality? Is this going to make a difference? Is a $25,000 down payment credit going to make any difference in California?
In California, it might not. We're in Orange County where the median home price is above $1 million right now. So, but I think people are hopeful for some benefit, right? Less stress. But the truth is, there probably isn't enough money to give everybody $25,000. So I'd be a little bit skeptical about our ability to do that.
Ivan, what do you say?
Yeah, I mean, there is still money in the federal coffers. They've just printed at this point, and they've been printing it at an alarming rate. Most people know that even just within the past 5 years, the federal deficit is up more than 35%, now over $35 trillion. And really, both candidates don't actually have a proposal on paying down this debt or decreasing the deficit. Everything that's been proposed is, very generous across the board.
Ivan, Trump says he's just going to wipe it out. He's just going to turn it around. How realistic is that?
And the rationale for that is, he's wiping it out because there's going to be GDP growth. Well, that really worked very well in the 80s and the 90s. But something happened during the Clinton years where when the government would borrow $1 and put that towards the economy, it used to be $1 that the government borrowed would translate into maybe $7 or $8 over the subsequent 5 years from that borrowing. Today, it's more like 50 cents to 35 cents return in the economy. So there's this diminishing return that's now very much a part of the dynamic of federal deficit spending, and that's irrevocable. You're kind of not going back in the other direction. So it's very dangerous to run deficits at this level. Obviously, California is running major deficits on an annual basis. Tax receipts are dwindling and going in the wrong direction.
Well, let me say,
companies are leaving.
I mean, to your point, we're not running deficits so much as we have overspent. California has a requirement constitutionally to balance our budget, but we have made commitments over the last couple of years that turns out we can't maintain without either cutting other programs or borrowing. But you're broadly, I appreciate the point you're making.
Your point also, Josh, is that if we are cutting things, what happens to those social programs that get the axe first, and how does that affect you as a Democratic state senator with constituents that are demanding that these programs stay in force?
So for me, I am, probably more inclined to subscribe to Ivan's broader point. I do think that, you can't pay for everything. And if you can't pay for everything, we have to have smart conversations about what truly are our priorities. And those are hard conversations to have, and I'm willing to have them. But my colleagues often aren't. And the default in California quite often is, let's figure out a way to raise taxes or raise more money. And you can ask the question, what's the limit? How much is too much to bear for the average taxpayer?
And how do you answer a taxpayer that comes to one of your rallies or stands in front of you and says, Democrats are only known for raising taxes, and you're a Democrat, you're going to get elected, and you're going to raise my taxes. And we see all these ads. We see all the ads on television that if a Democrat wins a spot, the gas tax is going to go up 90 cents, and this is going to go up, and this is going to. How do you answer that?
That's a tough one, because I can only speak to my own.
As you should.
Right, kind of my own priorities, my own philosophy. They're not wrong. They're not wrong. I mean, the evidence is very clear. Over the last 10 years, 12 years, the size of government in California has increased exponentially, and our ability to raise those revenues does not keep pace. When the market goes down, California winds up in really tough fiscal situations. So, I think that's a necessary conversation. But I'm only one of 40, only one of 31 Democrats. I'm not always on the same page as my colleagues.
Good for you. I love that. Ivan, California is losing taxpayers at the higher level. They're fleeing the state. How does that affect our economy, and how does that affect your clientele?
Well, the clients are diversified globally, across global equity markets, global fixed income markets. So I learned a long time ago, you do not put all your eggs in one basket, and that goes even for your own basket of stocks in your country. It's very dangerous to have a home country bias. But the flight of high quality, or I should say high earners and big earning corporations domiciling their corporations and moving them to other states with more favorable tax regimes, that's happening. That's been happening, and obviously that's a bad trend. You cannot have that continue for a protracted period of time, because that will just continue to impinge upon the revenue capabilities of the state, and the state needs more and more money than ever before. So it'd be great to see something that happens that keeps people around, but quality of life issues and all the things that many of my fellow residents here in LA we witness is there's a lot has changed since the pandemic. And people are finding, hey, we do have 50 other states. It's 49 other states in this union. So, Texas looks pretty good. Nevada's looking good to a lot of people, and we've seen that trend.
I want to talk about the cost of education, child care. When we come back, we have to take a break. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm Bruce Cook. It's the conversation tonight with State Senator Josh Newman and financial advisor Ivan Illan. Stay with me. We'll be right back. Welcome back to the conversation. I'm Bruce Cook tonight with special guest Senator Josh Newman and special guest Ivan Illan from Aligne Wealth Advisors Investment Management. And we are talking about these issues that are so important to all of us. I said I wanted to hit a few more before our time is up. We really need like hours and hours, Josh and Ivan, to talk. So forgive me for cutting you short at times as we move on. Let's hit the topic of education. And Josh, I want to start with Proposition 2, the community college initiative that you are very much involved in. And Ivan, I want you to jump in on education also, because our populace seems to be dumbing down. And if we're not too smart about our education, how are we going to be smart about our money? Josh, please start.
Let me start. So there's a proposition on the ballot. It's Prop 2. And what it would do if the voters pass it, it'll allow California to borrow $10 billion for both community colleges, at $1.5 billion for community colleges, but also $8.5 billion to modernize some of the most distressed schools across the state. Many of our schools haven't actually seen meaningful repairs or modernization since the 50s. So you have this very uneven playing field. As Ivan will probably know, there's a direct correlation between the quality of education in a particular area and property values. So it makes sense to make these investments, but we do have challenges in California, in this very large state with about 6 million kids in schools across the system. And California typically is in the bottom quarter of states when it comes to assessment tests. We made some progress in recent years, but part of that is making sure that kids have a good, clean, healthy, modern environment in which to learn. And so that's where this money will go if we borrow it. And this actually, Ivan mentioned, borrowing money. These are good investments. These are necessary investments. To make capital expenditures. The only way you can do that in California is to borrow that money either at the local level or the state level. So you'll see a bond at the local level. It'll have a letter like Measure L or something like that. Those monies, if invested, will typically be matched by state monies. Right now, the state has no funds to invest, and so that's why Prop 2 is necessary to sort of refill that pot so that we can match localities when they make these investments.
And what are the people saying about Prop 2? Is it going to go?
It's a good question. These things are always close these days, especially where people, as we've discussed, are under a lot of stress. So if you borrow money and you have to repay it at either the local level or the state level, somebody has to pay for that. At the local level, it comes out of your property taxes. At the state level, it comes out of our general taxes. But as opposed to some other things, these are good investments. Education is super important, but for the economy, for quality of life, for opportunities. So I'd argue that these are necessary investments, but it's going to probably be fairly close. It will be less. It'll be closer than Prop 36, for sure.
Interesting. Ivan, join me.
Yeah, we've been spending a lot of money on education, at every level for many, many years, not only in the state but nationally. The United States ranks nearly last in every ranking survey globally on education, and the kids aren't really getting prepared for higher education, and frankly, most people in the economy don't need to be going to higher education. They can be doing vocational schools or technical schools, and our educational system doesn't necessarily promote that or track that. For example, the way Europe does, and not like Europe's a great model of many things economically, but in this regard, there is sort of this understanding that not everybody has to go to college, so you don't have to create pathways.
But don't community colleges offer those kinds of technical and other sorts of training?
They do, absolutely. Yeah, they absolutely do, and those are very valuable. But that as a society, there's this general sort of bias towards everybody should be going to a 4-year liberal arts education in college, and that is the pathway to elevating yourself financially and career-wise.
If you can afford the tuition, if you can even to a state school, the tuition is high.
Yeah, and then look at things like robotics and things like AI. It's jobs like plumbers and electricians and surgical technicians that are actually going to be the last ones to be replaced by robots and AI. And of course, those are very lucrative professions.
I think I should have been a plumber instead of a radio talk host.
It's never too late. Never too late.
I'm just bad with my hands, though. I'm very bad with my hands. What can I tell you? I can barely hold the microphone straight. Listen, not to be ridiculous and silly, but you brought up AI, and I wasn't even planning to talk about that, but I want to talk about it a little bit. I think we need to be scared of AI. What do you say, Senator? And how should the government interface with what's happening in the AI world? The government doesn't know anything about it, or very little anyway.
That's true. Or politicians don't know a lot about it. So this is a good question. When we talk about government's role in regulating AI, should it be properly regulated at the state level or the national level? I'd argue the national level makes the most sense, particularly we're dealing with technology and the internet and the global marketplace, especially the competition in AI from other countries. But California has always been pretty aggressive in asserting our role in regulating certain things. And so there was actually a very controversial bill to regulate AI in the state, which passed the legislature, but the governor vetoed it at the end of September. And the argument was that we don't want to, disadvantage California as a place for AI investments and
creative advancement.
And it's a hard thing because these are technologies that have serious implications, not just about work, but about society as well.
Elon Musk says that AI is going to destroy humanity.
And yet Elon Musk has an AI company, right? So he must not completely believe that. But
no, he does completely believe it, and he'll make money on it.
Well, there you go.
Ivan, what do you say about AI and finances? What's it going to do to our world economy, our national economy, the stock market? What about fraud? What about fraud?
It's huge, Bruce. I mean, it's a big force. The way that the internet was a force back in the early 2000s, and looking at the way that has impacted our lives, AI is going to do something which is probably exponentially more than what the internet has already done. And I think the biggest risk as a society, and certainly as an economy, both at a state level, a national level, and international level, is going to be displacement of workers, just like manufacturing, that sector, which, by the way, 70 years ago, it was 12% of U.S. GDP. Today, our manufacturing sector is still 12% of GDP, but it has 85% less people working in that industry. And we're an 80% economy in the services sectors. And so you're going to see a lot of unemployment coming from very simple task-based type service operations, and that's just an inevitability, and this is just sort of the normal way in which things progress. It's just that before, okay, as a manufacturing economy, you can become a service economy. Well, what do you become next? What does that evolution look like? And, in the people I'm talking to, no one really has a good answer for that.
Senator Newman, what about your constituents? Are they worried about losing their jobs to AI?
They should be, to Ivan's point, or probably more appropriately, which jobs will be immune to AI, which jobs will be created by AI, which jobs will be displaced by AI. Those are the big questions. But at a policy level, I think these are, the implications are really serious, and so we should think about how we integrate AI into education, how we integrate AI into lots of processes, including government. And what's ironic about some of the displacement that AI is going to cause, it'll be in some of the jobs that were most lucrative right now: lawyers, radiologists. I'd almost say investment managers, but I don't offend
Absolutely, yeah. No, it's coming.
Yeah. What about radio hosts?
That's an interesting question. I probably you're okay for a while.
I don't think so. I think we're done.
Yeah.
They're gonna replicate me.
I will attest to the listeners here. This is a real guy, Bruce, for now.
Listen, we don't have a whole lot of time left, and I got so much to ask you, but I want to switch to Veterans Affairs, and I hope you'll join me, Ivan, on that too. Senator Newman is well known for his support of veterans. As I said in the beginning of the show, he served in the U.S. military, in the Army, and he's made helping these guys and gals a very big priority. Talk to me. What is this initiative that you started like 10 years ago?
Oh, I started, what I intended to be was kind of the equivalent of an executive search firm for vets to match up vets to companies that could benefit from their talents. Vets have so much to offer as they come home from their service, given how well they're trained, how disciplined they are, how loyal they are. And we frankly haven't done a very good job over the past decade. Even as, rhetorically, we're always so quick to thank vets for their services, but that the transition, especially for California's vets coming home from generally places far away from those two wars in Iraq and Afghanistan, too often got lost and then wound up buried in all the challenges we've been discussing about California. And by the time we saw them again, they had all kinds of unaddressed issues. And if we did a better job with that transition step, not only would we be better off as an economy, they have so much to offer, we'd probably save the government a ton of money because, all of these the challenges that they tend to have could have been prevented. And so that's something I continue to work on. I think there has to be a much better coordinated handoff from, sort of the federal Department of Defense level to the state when vets come home. And one of the things that I'm going to be working on this year is to finally get the legislature and then the governor to pass a bill that waives income taxes on military retirement income. There's sort of a misconception that military retirees are old. They're not. These are 45-year-old men, women who come back to California or don't with so much to offer after 20 years of service. And because we're taxing their retirement income and other states aren't, we're losing them to Texas, Nevada, Arizona. And there's a huge cost to our economy because of that.
We have 2 minutes left. I want each of you gentlemen to address our listening audience with your greatest hope and your greatest fear as we end our time together. Let me start with you, Ivan, in the financial markets.
Yeah, I would just say that, the 1970s, the late 1970s, if people remember that time, I mean, I was just, 4 or 5 years old by 1980. So it was a very difficult time for the middle class in this country. And the irony is that in the early 2020s, we've already seen very, very identical real disposable income growth, which has been very meager, about single digits, but very, very significant increases in U.S. total public debt per capita. So, and those stats almost look identical. And anytime you see something that looks so similar throughout history, especially economic data, it gets your attention in a very big way, and so we've got some big issues that have to be addressed.
Josh?
I actually let me stay with that middle class theme. I think the middle class was the foundation upon which we built American prosperity, and it's really challenged today. And I think the politics that come out of that are really equally challenging. And so if you're a working family in California, it's easy to feel like your government hasn't really served you well or has even forgotten you. And I think as we go into this election season, my hope moving out of this is that we'll get through it, and then that we elected people at every level, especially at the state level, will focus really hard on making California a good place to create a business, educate your kids, and raise a family in the ways that we were so proud of from the 50s, 60s, into the 70s.
Possible?
I think it's possible.
How optimistic are you?
I'm optimistic, but I'm an optimist. But is it easy? No. I think there's a lot of work to be done.
So what in the next 4 years? What about in the next 4 years?
Next 4 years, I'd like to see government kind of right-sized and rethought in California, so it's we're not running deficits, and we're growing our economy again and treating every Californian well.
Will the division cease no matter who's elected?
No, unfortunately, but hopefully it gets a little bit better and continues to do so over time.
Nicely said. Ladies and gentlemen, our time is up. Our conversation is done for now. So much more we could be talking about. Ivan, thank you so much for being on the program tonight. Always appreciate your wisdom. Same to you, Josh Newman, and best of luck on November 5th.
Thank you.
And I hope you'll come back often.
I will gladly come back. Thanks for having me.
Ladies and gentlemen, I'm Bruce Cook, and this is it for the conversation this evening. Have a wonderful week. We'll be back together again next weekend. Stay safe, stay healthy, be kind to one another. Good night.
For more deep thoughts, please subscribe to this podcast. Also, please feel free to visit www.ivanillan.com to submit questions or topics through the contact page. Until next time, keep thinking deeply.